Hey guys, we're inside now, and now we're going to take all of that information that we talked about outside, and we're going to make a drawing. Um, what we're basically doing is landscape design. You can take all kinds of classes, you can go online, you can look at, YouTube videos on really complex ways of doing this, but for the purposes of what we're doing, you don't need to go that far. I've taken landscaping classes before, and I've drawn up really elaborate designs and all that. And there's some really great tools and things that you can use to kind of help you make your drawing look better. But really, most of that stuff is to make it look better. So there's some really cool stencil type stuff that you can utilize, or you can purchase these if you really feel like it. Circles, all kinds of other shapes that we have here, different sizes. There's landscape and architect rulers that you can use for this type of really fancy elaborate drawings if you want. There's this thing's really cool. This was one of my favorite things because if you can see this, it's a ruler. But this again was one of my favorite things because I played with it in class. Probably shouldn't say that, but this tool really allows you to get some really nice bed lines, because if you can imagine you're going around the front of your house with this bed line and you're trying to trace this, it makes it a lot easier to get a nice straight line around the edge of that tool. Another one of this is another one of my favorite tools to use. You can actually see it right here. These are little circular pieces of tape, and I actually use those on probably just about everything, especially when I'm having my paper up on a board like this, because it's really quick and convenient, and it's easy to just have the paper on there. These are pretty cheap. You can get these at art stores. You can purchase them online, wherever. But the neatest thing about this is the top here. It allows you to pull the excess tape through here and see if it'll do it for you. But and when you do that, it releases the edge of that sticker right there, and bam! See that? And then you just take the little guy off and stick him on there. So really cool. This is pretty cheap. I would say this is definitely worth buying something like that. The other thing, if we're going to do a drawing, you want to talk about what you're going to draw with. So this is a really fancy set of drawing pencils. I do a lot of sketching and other types of drawing artwork as well as design work. So I went ahead and bought these. They're really nice pencils, but for what we're doing, you don't need to have anything fancy like that. But I will just show you in case this is something that you're interested in. They come in different densities, so you have a darker or a lighter color, basically, or shading from your pencils. And we could go into which ones you use for which, but again, it's not really important for what we're trying to do. So I'm actually going to leave my fancy pencils out of the way for this afternoon. Don't tell him, but I'm sharing. We like to call it sharing. I'm sharing my son's artboard. Use whatever you have. If you don't have a board to draw on, that's perfectly fine. Use your table. You just want to have a nice flat surface and a little bit of room to kind of like set up whatever it is that you're drawing with. For me, I have just a regular marker, again, borrowed from my son. And I also took the liberty, since I was in there borrowing this marker, I borrowed some of his crayons. Again, nothing fancy, guys. Anybody can do this. Just use whatever you have. So, you know, we're thinking about how we want to put all this information that we gathered outside into a drawing. And so you want to make sure you're having the information in relation to something that's not going to change. You know, the shadows will change during the day. You know, your plants are going to change during the season. So really, you know, you're talking about structures. So the first thing that you really want to put on your drawing is going to be the structure. For me, that's my house. So I'm going to go ahead and draw my house on here, and you know, where you put it on your page is going to depend on how your yard is set up. For me, there's very little yard in front of my house. The majority of my yard is in the back, and then there's a little bit on the sides. So my house is going to be more towards the front here, towards the top of the paper. And then the yard will be back here. So what we want to do is put in the structure first, because that's going to be constant. It'll always be there, and it'll be a point of reference for everything else that we put on the drawing. You know, if the majority of your yard is in the front of your yard and that's adjacent to your street, then you're going to want to draw the street. You're going to want to draw the sidewalk. You're going to want to draw, you know, any utility structures that are near your yard or in your yard. Just so that you can kind of have a point of reference when you're trying to just map this all out. But again, for me, the majority of my yard's in the back. So my structure is going to be, my house is going to be more towards the top. So I chose black because it kind of gives a very definite structural area. And then I will use the crayons to sort of go back in afterwards and draw in some of the details. So I'm going to go ahead and put the structure in. Super complicated, guys. This rectangle is my house. Okay, so the street is going to be up here. So I'm just going to go ahead and write in, you know, just so I know for reference that this is the street. There we are. So now for the back of my house, if you guys remember, I have that little deck with the stairs coming off. So I'm going to go ahead and reference that as well on here. Okay, there's my deck. And then I'm going to go ahead and put the stairs in as well, just so that we know that that space is taken up. So for the stairs, I'm going to go ahead and make some vertical lines, just so that we know that that's different from the top of the deck. Because if you remember, we're going to talk about those stairs and how to maybe utilize those in some of the gardening. So there's my stairs, deck, house. The next thing that you want to do is you want to draw in your property lines, wherever your yard ends that you're going to be dealing with. Mine, again, is pretty simple. It's a rectangle. Yours may be different, but for what we're doing, you don't really have to worry about it being super accurate, because you know, this is something that it's a preliminary drawing. So this is mainly to kind of get ideas for the space and to just be able to kind of analyze it and look at everything as a whole, and it's for planning. We most likely are not going to need to do like a formal drawing. Formal drawing would be you'd have to go out and you'd measure, and you would make sure that all your measurements came off a baseline and so forth. So, but for us, we don't really need that. So again, we're just gonna kind of give a general drawing. You don't have to be an artist to do this. So I'm gonna go ahead and generally draw in where my lines are. So we have the side yard where the fence is. That was where we started off in the beginning of the video. So we'll go ahead and draw that in here. And then we have the shared driveway on this side. So for that, it's not really a distinct property line, but I'm going to draw it in as if it was. But normally you might have something like a dashed line to represent that, or whatever it is that you're choosing. So I'm going to go ahead and draw this in. And then I'm just going to come across the back. The back of our property line is fairly straight, so. Okay, so we have the property line, the streets up here, my house, my deck, and my stairs. Another thing that you want to go ahead and put in is some utilities. So I have that one utility structure on this walkway over here. So I'm just going to go ahead and mark that so that I know it's an existing piece that's already there. And I'm going to mark that with an oval, and it was a little less than halfway from the front there. So that's right there. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and mark the areas that are already fenced. So this back portion of my yard is not fenced, but this portion is, and to about right here is on that side. So for that, what I like to do is I just like to draw a rectangle over that line so that I know that it's fenced and it's, again, a stable structure. It's not going anywhere. So, just going to come like this. And it actually goes all the way past my yard. And then on this side, we have the fence. And then there was that tall piece of wooden fence versus the metal fence. So I'm going to go ahead and notate that too, just because that will make a shadow at the end of the day. It's really not going to affect anything during the majority of the day. But at the end of the day, when the sun's on the other side, it will cast a little bit of a shadow. But by then the light's not going to be very strong, so it's not going to be like affecting it hugely. So I'll just go ahead and mark that there is just that little section of wooden fence. Okay? Let's see, what else? I think that that is pretty much it as far as structure that's already there. So now we'll go in and we'll add some of the secondary features that are there. Stuff like the water feature that I'm going to put in, that part of it's already there, some of the plants that I'm keeping that I'm not messing with, that's already there, some of the existing beds that are already there. You want to go ahead and mark those things now so that that space is accounted for and you can really start to see which areas you need to build up. So for existing plants that are already there, I'm just going to use a green crayon because that makes sense. So we have the Rose of Sharon that was over here, and it was almost right across from that utility structure there. So we're just going to go ahead and I'm just going to use circles. You can use whatever shape you want, but circles is fairly easy. Plus it's quicker. So we'll just put him right there. And then there was also the hemerocallis bed that was beneath it. So I'm going to go ahead and label that as well. And it was just sort of around there. There's also a plant that I rescued from a previous job that I took home. I planted it in my yard, and I moved some irises around, sort of behind it. I don't know what it is yet, but it's exciting. It's got buds on it, and as soon as it blooms, I should be able to figure out what it is. But that's actually at the very edge of the front of my yard by the sidewalk. So I'm going to put that in there too, because I'm thinking that I'm going to utilize that front area too, just along the fence line though. So that guy's up here. Okay, and there's some bushes right here and along this side existing already. So you want to mark, again, anything that's existing. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in. So there's a bush here, okay, and then right here, it's a little bit lower, there was another privet, and he came out to about there. There were some existing plants right here as well. I have not decided if I'm going to get rid of those or not yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw them in just so I know that there's plant material there. Okay, now as we move further down, I had my little pathway that came out here, so I will draw that in, and let me see if I can find a brown. That was about here. Okay, and it went behind the second privet, and then it came out. Alright, so we have a little walkway there. There's some other brush there I haven't really decided what I'm going to do with yet. There's my Chinese privet in there. Okay, now behind here was the water feature. That had, I'm gonna use blue, that had the little circle in the corner. It was about like that. There's a big tree right here that it's not doing very well, but I can't really cut it down right now, so he's staying by default. So we're just gonna put that right here. And it's a pretty decent size tree. So you'll notice what I did right here. I put some dashes when I went over another structure. That's just to make sure that you can see both things. You could do that or you could not do that, but because I was already trained in this, I just happened to do that already. So you do that, and then I planted some Mahonia Beelbi behind it because I was having problems with some smaller animals and some rabbits and stuff, so I thought maybe they won't like that because it's spiky and it'll hurt. And it goes well in the shade, and it has really pretty blue berries after it flowers. So I thought that'd be interesting to kind of contrast with the water. So we'll put those in. There's about 4 of them. They were pretty small though, and I just put them in that back corner because I happened to see that some of the animals were coming in through that little corner. Now, the rest of this backyard is pretty much brush. There's not really any rhyme or reason to it. It's just like where the yard ends and would meet the woods naturally. It's just a bunch of different stuff back there. So for what I'm doing, I'm just going to go ahead and draw a wavy line, because it's not really a defined line at this point. And once we go ahead and decide where the beds are, then that will be decided as well. Okay. Now, if you remember, in this corner, I had my other rows. I also planted a butterfly bush, a buddleia, and there were some black-eyed Susans, some Rudbeckia, and let me see, I think I also planted some well, I think that's all I had in that spot. So I'm going to go ahead and draw that in. And that spot already has a little bit of wood chips in it, because I wanted to get those plants into the ground before the frost came. So I went ahead and put those in. A little rushed, but they're there. So I'll go ahead and draw that in. It was sort of in the corner here and then came up just a little bit. Let's see. The other thing that I have here, my wood chip pile is right here. So, you know, it's there right now, but it won't be there once we do this project, because all of that's going to get used. So I'm not going to draw that in. And then I have the one crepe myrtle right here, directly in front of and below my deck. So I'm going to draw that in. Alright, so that is my preliminary drawing. You know, obviously yours is going to look different because your yard's going to have different things in it, but you know, just make sure that you get everything that's there, all structures. If you're finding that you have some low power lines, you'll want to go ahead and draw those in. If you're finding that you have, you know, shared space, you want to go ahead and mark that in there. Just make sure that you have everything that's already there, because it would be a real big pain to forget something, and then you're planning and you're making all these drawings and you have all these great ideas, and you get out there and not so much, and it doesn't work. So just make sure you get everything on there. Now at this point is really where you're gonna kind of put in some of those other things that we're talking about, the observations, right? So some of the observations we had were, what did we say? The sun, for one. That's a really big one. So for me, the sun actually, you know, there's a house right here. The sun actually comes from this side of my yard and crests overhead and goes to this side of my yard. And that's important to note, again, because of your shadows. So, you know, this house right here is casting a shadow onto my side yard here and here. But then these trees and bushes are also casting shadows into my yard, basically all the way kind of this way. Because if you think about it, all this is behind me is wooded. So we're going to basically just show that so we can keep all that in mind for planning. So we'll go ahead and you want to put your sun orientation just somewhere out of the way. Don't draw it like right here where you're trying to plan. So for me, I'm just going to put it up here. And I'm just going to make my little happy sun. Right, there he is. And I'm just going to put that he is actually going this way. Alright, so I don't know if you can exactly see that, but there is a sun there. He's smiling because he's happy, and there's a little arrow that's just pointing that way, and that's just going to remind me that, you know, that the sun is going that way. And then let's see, what else do we need? Oh yeah, we're going to talk about slope. So for the slope, I'm just going to choose a different color, one that I haven't already used. We'll try an orange. So the slope of my yard, again, remember we said this side is higher than this side. So, and also it's sort of kind of going this way too. So just to show that, we're going to go like this and kind of have it pointing that way. And we're just going to write slope. So it's kind of going towards the house, but it's also kind of going towards the backyard. And really, it's sort of the same thing back here. So we have, this is the lowest point right here. So I'm going to make an X right here, and I'm going to write lowest point. Alright? And so really for this, it's kind of almost going straight this way. Okay? Alright. Now, we said that this side yard we weren't really going to mess with, so I'm not going to really draw that in because it's not really the most usable space and it doesn't really get a lot of sunlight. So I'm just not going to mess with it right now. It's more important for me to get the back and the other side that gets used more often. So we have our slope, we have our sun, we have existing structures, we have the existing plants. So when we're talking about placement of plants, again, light comes up, right? So as far as where shadows are, we will use this one. We have this area right here gets the most light. This little triangle, if you will, gets the most light. So we want to be able to put the plants and vegetables in there that require that summer heat, the summer light. That's going to be, you know, your afternoon light. You ever heard somebody say afternoon sun versus morning sun? Well, there's a huge difference. This area right here gets morning sun. Morning sun is not the sun at full intensity. It's light enough to grow stuff, don't get me wrong, but a lot of your plants that require the high light, they're not going to grow very well there. So, because it's shaded. Now, on this side, it's high light, and especially in the afternoon. What I mean in the afternoon is about 1:30, 2 o'clock is usually when it gets the hottest here. And that's the kind of light that you want your vegetables to have. It's the most intense light that you're going to get during the day, and usually for the longest amount of time for the day. So, you know, these two areas are significantly different in the amount of light that they receive. So you really think about your yard and what areas that you could compare to this drawing. Because it'll make a huge difference in the outcome of how your plants turn out. So this is going to be morning light, afternoon light, and then you kind of have this area in here where you're kind of in between, because it might get a little bit of morning light or it might get a little bit of afternoon light as the sun rotates. So it's not going to be full sun, but it's not going to be full shade, and it's not going to stay, that condition is not going to stay constant. So that area is going to be a bit more tricky to figure out. But for what I'm thinking of, I think that most of the concentration of where I am going to plant is going to be on this side right here, and I'm going to probably build out something right here, and then I may take out this and take advantage of this as well. So really when you're drawing stuff in the landscape, you see a lot of curved lines because those are more natural as far as what you would see in a normal landscape. You don't tend to see very strong geometric shapes. You tend to see curved shapes. So for this right here, I think what I'll probably do is I want to keep this access open a little bit, so I'm going to be careful about the end here of this fence. Because right now the truck can drive in here, and this is a great access point for me to get to the materials to the rest of my yard. So I don't want to go too close to this or out too far where it's hard for me to get around my stuff. So I'll probably come back a couple of feet and start out this way. And then I'm going to come out some. I want to take advantage of this fence line and that full sun as much as possible. And then I'll connect it to the area that was already started last fall. So you get something that kind of looks like this. Again, stay away from geometric shapes. It just doesn't look good to the eye. It doesn't look natural. And then for here, what I'll do is there's an access point right here to get underneath here for a door. So I don't want to block that off. So I'll probably start here. And I haven't really decided on exactly how far I want to come out. I don't want to go too far, but I want to have enough space. And since we already have that crepe myrtle there, I'm going to come out like this. I'm going to go around that because with the crepe myrtle there, that's going to give me a little bit of shade. So I could still put some plants in there that would be fall plants even. Fall vegetables, third season vegetables. So I'll come out there and then maybe I'll make this kind of almost kidney bean it to the side so you get that wave almost. And what that's going to do too is when you come into this, it's really going to give a vase effect, where if you're looking, you're going to come out wide. Alright, so then I think I'm going to go ahead and redo this area. So I'm going to draw on here that line just next to the one that's already there, because we don't want to come out and impede the walkway to the stairs. And then this will stay the same. This area right here is going to stay the same. But then right here, since there's a little bit more sunlight, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut into this a little bit and create some more usable space for me to plant. So I think what we'll end up doing is we'll probably end up coming in from here and maybe even into this little walking path right there. And we'll bring it out a little bit more too. See that? So there's the existing, and this will be the new one. We're going to keep this privet because it provides a lot of visual blocking of neighbors. We love our neighbors, but we also want a little bit of privacy. And so we want that balance. So we'll block the majority, and then we'll leave some spots that we can still kind of see through, but it won't look really bad. And so around this privet, we have it actually pruned up. And what that means is that we have trimmed off all the lateral branches. And all a lateral branch is, you have the main trunk of the tree, and so all of these would be lateral branches, right? So what we've done is we've just eliminated all the lateral branches up to a certain point. And then we let the plant then grow out up here, and we continue to prune off anything that comes down here. And it actually, it gives you, again, it blocks views, but it gives you some usable space on the ground. So what we'll end up doing is we'll end up making some beds that will be underneath. And again, I'm going to draw some dashed lines because this shape right here is actually more of a canopy shape, the top of the tree, and I want to be able to communicate underneath that there's going to be something. So this right here will just be the bed line, and then under that large tree there's the path, so it'll end there, and it will end on the path. And then from here, since some of the sunlight's coming in this spot particular, we'll probably start in here somewhere and then bring this out and bring it out to the water feature. And then there's a little bit of space to the side of the base of the tree. The base of the tree is right there. And then you have this area behind. I'm not going to mess with that because it's pretty shaded back there. So I don't think that anything's really going to grow very well as far as vegetables. And then we're coming to this other side of the water feature, which I think we can probably utilize as well. So I'm going to tentatively draw kind of this waved shape. And then where all this brush is right here, as we get closer to the area of full light, you'll be able to sort of transition from some lower light levels or early spring vegetables into some more of the summer stuff. So we're going to go ahead and keep this pretty flat in the back, and then bring it back up and curve it to meet that corner area where we already have that crepe myrtle. So this is the preliminary for this side, and then on this right here, we're going to make some just narrow beds because, again, we're going to put crawlers on here. So we're just going to make this pretty flat, and then it will sort of meet up with that Rose of Sharon, and then again here, and then meet up with that privet. This is an existing bed right here already, and it actually goes up to the front, and so this is fairly straight as well, and then it comes to there. Now again, there's already a lot of plants in there, but for the purpose of this, I'm not really going to get into it because it's going to kind of be a little bit of an extra space, maybe experiment with some stuff in some lower light and see how it does. So that is my preliminary drawing. Again, structures, sunlight, utilities, slope, lowest point, existing plants, water feature, paths, and then go in and draw out some preliminary lines of where you want your new beds to be. It's not complicated. It's very logical. You gotta know what is there before you can add stuff or take stuff away. So start with what's already there. Locate your sun, locate your areas of highlight and low light, mark them out so that you can see this as a whole working together. Okay, so the next drawing that we're going to do is going to be, and I'm going to do this fairly quickly, it's going to be the new lines of the yard with the addition of the beds that we have. We're not going to have any of the slope or any of the observations. This is strictly going to be so that you can see how it's going to look, the edges of the beds themselves. And then once we have that, then you can start to get an idea of how much space that you have to work with, and then you can think about which plants at this point that you want to put in those areas. So I'm going to do this fairly quickly, and then I'll come back and talk. Alright guys, so you can kind of see the second drawing that I've done. It now takes into consideration all the areas that we're going to plant in, existing items, such as the plants and the structure of the house and all of that. Here's our little walkway. That's the little water feature. And you can see the fence lines. So this is what I'm planning on the edges to look like when I'm done. So now I can sort of see what areas I have left to plant in. Again, so we're not going to plant back here, but with the exception of that, all these blank spaces in here I can plant in. So I expect that the most of my summer plants, peppers, tomatoes, maybe a little bit of squash in this area down here, you know, maybe some melons along this fence line, maybe. Probably won't do any corn because corn, you need to have lots of cross-pollination going on to get corn. Each one of those kernels has to be pollinated. And so generally, you know, you need to plant like, I don't know, anywhere from maybe 5 to 10 rows of corn to really get a good ear of corn out of it. But there's, you know, eggplants, do some onions, some potatoes, some celery, some broccoli. There's a lot of different things that you can put into those sunny areas. And another thing you want to take into consideration is when you need to plant the crop and when you can harvest it, because essentially what you're going to be doing is you're going to be rotating things out of these areas, because you can't really plant your tomatoes and that type of stuff as early as your cool season plants. So you want to start with putting some of your cool season plants in that you know will be gone or won't be in the way, and what I mean is shorter than some of your tomatoes, some of your peppers, some of your herbs, that kind of stuff. So you want to keep in mind this has the fence, and we're going to go ahead and put stuff that can crawl on the fence, since this side will not be blocking any sunlight. So you can still utilize this fence area. So that's what I'm going to do. So on this fence, I'll probably go ahead and put some cucumbers. I'll probably do that. And what that'll look like is it'll just be every couple of feet, and you'll want to go ahead and just kind of, this is very preliminary, just to kind of give yourself an idea of you know, what this is going to look like. So go ahead and do that, and then for stuff in front of that, I'm sort of thinking in this area right here, maybe do some of the squash. So that's going to take up a bit more room. So that's going to be more of some circles. And the squash that I grow get really big, the plants themselves. So I think I'll put my squash right there. Squash don't last the whole season as far as into the summer. Once it starts getting really hot, they'll die back. So then that area can be used for putting something else in. So keep that in mind, again, that you're going to be rotating through these areas. And then I think for here, I think maybe the potatoes would do probably pretty well, because those are planted early and those do last for a while. And they're not like super tall, but they do get kind of tall. And so you can sort of space that out. And then you can also plant in between too. Not right on top of each other, but in between. Remember we said we were going to do green beans up here. So these will all be green beans and peas. And then you might have some room to do some lettuce up here. Maybe some spinach. And then, let's see. We definitely need some tomatoes. And I'm sort of thinking that I want to have most of my tomatoes in this area right here. I love tomatoes and I love to sell tomatoes. So we'll try this. We'll go ahead and put the tomatoes in there. And that won't affect the green beans. And again, you can put some shorter stuff in the front. Maybe we could do some onions in here in the very front, because that's not gonna really take up that much room. Let's see, and peppers like the sun too, so I'm thinking maybe we do the peppers up here. And we could put them, actually, you know what? This spot right here is going to get pretty hot. And I know that peppers really like to be in the heat. So I'm actually thinking I might do the peppers right there, because the side of the house is cement right there. So it's really going to get hot. So why don't we do that? We'll put some peppers in there. And let's see. We're definitely going to need to do some herbs in here somewhere too. And I'm thinking I might maybe utilize maybe either this or part of right here by the stairs, and then in here, because then I can just pick from the kitchen. So maybe like this section right here would be herbs. And then also in here, we could also put some herbs, and that way it's convenient for me to just go out the back porch and pick my herbs and then come back in. So, you know, that's sort of the idea. You just want to start planning, really thinking about that last drawing. You can even bring that last drawing next to this one and sort of just look at it as a reference, so that you can really start to think about what your plants need and what areas that you have that you can put them in the right place. That's what people mean by the right plant in the right place. If you put the right plant in the right place, then that plant is going to work harder for you. It's not going to be stressed out. It's going to have a better environment because you put it in the right place. So you're just going to have better results. So I hope this was helpful for you guys. It's a little lengthy, but I just want to make sure that for somebody who's never done this before, that they feel confident that they can do something like this, and that they can put the thought into the planning and think about how to best utilize their yard, so that they can go ahead and make good choices in the planning stage, so that they're not having to do extra work later on, finding out that something they thought was going to work just isn't. So if you guys have any other questions about this, or want to see any other examples, just post your questions below here and I will answer them for you best I can. I just want you guys to feel like this is something you can do. You don't have to take all these crazy classes. or spend all this money on special equipment. I borrowed. Yes, I borrowed my son's fancy art set that he got for this Christmas, and a marker and some crayons. You know, that's pretty much something anyone can get a hold of. So just utilize what you have to make yourself a drawing so that you're not making this harder for yourself. And thanks for watching. Thanks for the likes. And if you like what you see on here and you want to find out more information, I can be reached at an email that's on my page. And subscribe if you like it. Thanks.